I was just in New York City this past weekend and had a chance to stop off and see the New York Marathon running by. I was visiting some friends in Brooklyn. They were a couple of blocks off. First time I'd ever watched a marathon race, and reminded me that we had just done an episode on track running events, and right next to it in the archives was a folder on marathon running. So I thought, hey, I'll just open up this folder, take a look, and see what we can find. So join me for this week's episode on marathon running here at Strange As It Seems. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hicks, curator of the Strange As It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hicks, who created Strange As It Seems in the late 1920s. And speaking of the late 1920s, I opened up the folder on marathon runners, and the first thing that came out was a full New York Herald Tribune article here on Joey Ray. Apparently Chesty Joey was his name, his nickname, and he ran a mile in 4 minutes 20 seconds or better 65 times. What an amazing story of Chesty Joey. I didn't find the Strange As It Seems comic strip, but what an amazing story, and we've got a great photograph of him leading the field near Forest Hills in the Long Beach Marathon. DeMar is right behind him. We'll talk about Clarence DeMar here in a moment. But some of the great marathon running and runners from the early or late 1920s and 1930s here found this really amazing story too from 1928. A Bunyan Derby leader. He was racing with horses, apparently. This Payne here, amazing guy. But apparently he entered a race. His hobby was running, same as Will Rogers is roping, which is funny, same time as Will Rogers. Persons living along the road to Foyle will tell that Andy Payne, when he attended school at Foyle, he would send the other children of the family to school on horseback, and he would start after them on foot and always get there first. Friends of the young runner say that when he entered in a district track meet here a few years ago, he didn't arrive at the field until the call had been issued for entrance in the mile race. The boy didn't have time to don his tracksuit, so he took his place at the starting line attired in ordinary clothes and farm boots, and still won the race. Crazy story of Andrew Payne. Here's an ancient story of Eucydus of Plataea. He ran 125 miles between dawn and sunset to bear the sacred fire from Delphi, and he dropped dead at the finish. Yeekies. And we have a couple of old timers here. How about Peter Foley? Ran 26 miles in the Boston Marathon, 1938 Boston Marathon, in 4.5 hours at the age of 85 years old. And here's a cutout of Life magazine showing how the strain of the race was too much for this Duncan McCallum, who collapsed at the finish line, but the strain did not beat 85-year-old Peter Foley. Look at this picture of him, I love it, who ran first time in the 1904 Boston Marathon and has insisted on running ever since. Barred because of his age, he started out this year 2 hours before the entrance, and he finished the course 5 minutes before the winner. That's what a great story. And another speedy old-timer here, the Galloping Grandpa. How about the 75-year-old Charlie Hart of England? Ran 50 miles non-stop in 8 hours and 5 minutes in August of 1939. Crazy. Love this. Old news clippings here from 1939, and apparently a letter from Tom Go, looks like, who sent the information in to John Hicks and featured here the Strange As It Seems comic strip in 1939. I love this one. How about Johnny Connors of Roxbury, Massachusetts? He's a marathoner, and he smokes a cigar every half mile he runs. And here's a man that ran from Southampton, England to Paris, France. He ran up the gangplank and ran around the deck throughout the voyage, ran all the way from England to Paris, basically just kept running on the ship. Crazy. Here it is, November 1937. What a story. Here's one going back to 1937. 1935 with a handwritten letter in corroboration of Alf Shrubb, the famous English athlete. He ran 15 miles against a relay team of 15 one-milers and won. And here we are. Here's the story on Clarence DeMar. Amazing. This guy won the Boston Marathon apparently 7 times. Here's the corroborating letter from the Boston Chamber of Commerce. In 1942, he was featured quite a few times here in Strange as It Seems, going all the way back to 1931. Here's a great picture of Clarence DeMar winning the Boston Marathon, one of the 7 times, but also an amazing story. Apparently, one year it was snowed out, and he ended up running it anyway. He ran 44 miles through heavy snow and did it in 7 hours. Crazy. I guess he was, here it is. Clarence DeMar entered a marathon race. It was scheduled to be run from Providence to Boston in March of 28. Due to a heavy snowstorm that made the roads almost impassable, the race was called off. And DeMar entered the race alone, covered the heartbreaking route in 7 hours. Crazy. Clarence DeMar. And one of those stories that could go in an episode on coincidences. How about this? The 1931, 1932, and 1933 Boston Marathon was each run by the runner who had finished 8th place the year before. So if you want to win the Boston AA Marathon, 26 miles over macadam and concrete roads from Hopkinton to the finish line on Exeter Street, a good way is to finish 8th the year before. Jimmy Hennigan was 8th in 1930, winner the next year. Phil De Bruyne was 8th in 1931, winner a year ago, and in 8th place last year was a short, prudent Pawtucket, Rhode Island mill worker named Leslie Samuel Paulson, who trains for marathons, not by drinking beer like many of his confreres, but by total abstinence from alcohol and tobacco. Long runs around Pawtucket when he gets through work. And last week, Leslie Paulson started off smoothly with the group bunched in 3rd place. For 18 miles, he scampered lightly along, not plodding like most marathoners, but running on his toes. Of the other runners in the race, 219 straggled behind him, and 2, Walter Hornby and John DeGloria, stayed in front. Just before Newton Hills, the most punishing part of the distance, Paulson caught Hornby. At Brayburn, he caught plucky little DeGloria, ran past him at the top of a hill, and that settled the race. Running shrewdly, keeping to the shelter of trees as much as possible. When the chilly wind blew in his face, waving to his parents and fiancée at the finish, Paulson broke the tape in 2 hours, 31 minutes, 1.6 seconds, no less than 34 seconds below the Olympic marathon record, and a full 2 minutes better than the record ever for the Boston run. And he was 8th the week before, or the year before. Strange as it seems. And how about the wheelbarrow marathon? A.E. Williamson, he wheeled his wife 1,200 miles from Brisbane to Melbourne, Australia. What a feat, huh? A.E. Williamson of Brisbane, Australia, the wheelbarrow marathon. And here's a guy who skipped a rope 600 miles in 28 days. Tom Morris, also from Australia. Some crazy all-round athlete Australians he went from Melbourne to Sydney, 590 miles, 28 days in August of 1935. And the final crazy marathoner, how about Francis Dara from Boston? This guy ran 12 and a half miles, but he ran it up Pikes Peak. Did it in 2 hours, 8 minutes, 14.6 seconds, which is a world's record at the time. Don't know if it's been done faster since. The finishing point exactly 1 mile higher than the starting point. Amazing. Francis Dara. Well, that wraps up this week's episode and the folder on marathon runners. Thanks so much for joining. If you like stories like this about the strange and unusual, feats of endurance, feats of strength, crazy animals, ancient animals, all kinds of things here at Strange as It Seems week after week as I dive into the archives, please hit the bell to subscribe. Leave a like, leave a follow. it certainly goes a long way to helping keeping this content going. And we'll see you next week for another amazing story out of the Strange As It Seems archives here at Strange As It Seems.